in my experience of talking to dreamers and dedicating my life to dreamers, that is a very beautiful common denominator that I see over and over again, is that it is not the way they wanted it to look, especially financially. People wish that it could have come from somewhere else. I had a friend just recently have got something financed by her ex-husband. That was not ideal because now she owes her ex-husband money, but she got to do this thing. Now I'm not, supporting people, whatever. There's no lesson there, but the common denominator is that sometimes the money comes in ways that are not the way that we would say is ideal. Now, I am not saying anything. I'm not landing on any judgment or confirmation of that needing to be the way it is or letting it be okay. It's just an objective thing to say that here we are living our dreams, and let's perhaps just keep the conversation open, that sometimes it comes in different ways because of things that are outside of our ideal. And so that's all I want to say about that. So I really appreciate that you shared that vulnerably with us, because you're not alone in that.
Yeah. So, so for me, that was a thing like, okay, instead of resisting that, oh, that's, look at me, my mom's bailing me out to, like, okay, it's time for me to choose gratitude. Wow.
Wow.
You're loving to be a part of wanting to beautify her home to be a place of beauty and amazement for her to have her children and grandchildren, great grandchildren here. And she's very willing and open and wanting to bless me with that. So rather than resist, because, well, I don't, put a judgment on it. No, that's not how it should be. I need to make the choice. Thank you, Mother. What a blessing. Okay.
Wow.
That is, for her, what a blessing to think, oh, good. He's got a good vibe and good. He's going to go and be happy and enjoy a trip.
You know,
So,
I would say bringing it back and tying it back to the purpose of going to Europe in the first place. Sometimes, as I am I'm profoundly on a spiritual path as well, sometimes I make it way too complicated for myself. But Shaun, if your spiritual path was only the spiritual path of gratitude and that was it, it's enough. So let's say that that's the only reason why you went to Europe, is that you learned to receive with gratitude. Bam! Humongous. That's humongous. So again, I'm inspired by the way that you said yes, because you have had resistance to that in the past, and you were trying something new out, and it appears that it gave your mom joy as well. So something about that is pretty profound as well. I'm going to lead us somewhere else, and it'll be one of our last questions because of our time as well. Before I go
okay.
over there, though, is there anything else you wanted to make sure to say about anything so far?
I think for me, overall, there's a lot of amazing catalytic things that catalyzed for me. I was delayed in coming home just a little bit because of a plane thing, which with the delay, I'm like, okay, I couldn't get my plane. It was a standby ticket. So I went to Naples for a few days and went to the National Archaeological Museum, which is considered by some, like, I listened to the Rick Steves podcast for Naples and some of his guests. And they're like, it is the most significant museum in Italy. So it's got all of the Rome in the first or second century AD had baths, the Roman baths. They were built almost the size of Disneyland. So imagine all these baths, endless baths, and they had these ginormous sculptures in marble created, 10 feet plus tall. And in the 1700s, the Farnese family found them when they were trying to find some stuff. Anyway, they started excavating all these big, huge statues, and then later they were brought to Naples and put in this museum, plus everything from Herculaneum and Pompeii that were buried in 79 AD by the volcano. Most of that treasure and art and everything was also brought to there. So for me, in wanting to sculpt and seeing Florence and Rome and the Louvre in Paris, the Prado Museum in Madrid, I'm seeing all these different things, and boom, all of a sudden, Naples, I'm seeing tons of stuff going back in decoration and sculpture that predates the medieval times and the Renaissance, where I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff. It's ancient. All this medieval stuff and Renaissance decoration that I'd seen all over Europe. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at the origins of it so much more, in so much more depth. Anyway, there are some things that sculpturally, artistically just came together. Let me tell you one thing that, for example, if you look in medieval art, you have usually Mary and the infant baby Jesus, or the apostles, and they've got a halo around their head, or sometimes they've got beams of light coming out of their heads. I mean, you see that in paintings. I'm in the museum in Naples seeing frescoes taken out of Pompeii that have these halos. Like, wait a minute, what's that? Like, that's pagan, or whatever someone might, that wasn't a Christian thing. Like, how did the Christians adopt it? And there's a lot we could go into there. Like, wow.
Well, Shaun, you led us very naturally to exactly what I wanted to illustrate is the next step for you after taking this dream on, battling some of those fears, some of those barriers, is now taking you to the next step where you're ready to make a decision. And you perfectly illustrated where I wanted to take us is your passion for sculpture and your passion for art. And that's where I want to end this. Actually, we have just a few minutes, but I wanted to say, there it is. That's the next chapter for you, is that all of this from the very beginning, where I had that dream, where you decided to say yes and to look at it and to feel it and to just let yourself be crazy and wild and say yes to things that you'd never say yes to. My experience of you is that you are more open than I've ever known you. You have an inner awakening inside of you. It's a pleasure to be in your presence. I mean, even just being on the phone with you, I can feel it from you. I said this to you before too. And now you are making all of that actually very manifested into a decision where you're taking it into the next step of your art and the contribution that you want to be to humanity. So that makes sense to me. That makes sense why someone who is as passionate as sculpture as you are about sculpture and art would, it's a necessity, it's a life requirement to be in Europe and to study the greats the way that you did. So anything you want to say about your future and what that looks like, what the dream
When after I went sailing, I went up to Venice. Oh man, I went there one day last year, and it was way more amazing than I ever thought. And I wasn't impressed by the mainland nor going out to the island, but after I got away from the bus station, and then it started to be amazing, and to see these bridges and narrow streets and the canals and the architecture, amazing architecture and decoration on everything. And, what an amazing place. So I went there again this year, and I was there. I kept extending, and at one of the museums there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a Rodin piece. I didn't realize that was here. Then I saw another Rodin, like, oh, the Thinker. And then I researched, there were 20 some bronzes of that created, from the original. And so one of them there is there. And so it's cool to see some of these big, very famous things and thinking they're awesome.
And
And I have it within me. Like there is something in me that knows that I can focus and hyper focus and create amazing, and it will take work because anatomy, oh my gosh, it is not easy to make something look real and to know the underlying ligaments and bones and tendons and lay those out in clay or stone and put them in the right proportions. Like that takes work, and it will take work, but there's part of me like, okay, come on, it's time to make some of these amazing sculptures that will be prized. And I felt like, yeah, it's time, and I can get after it. So that is yet to be seen, and I don't want to profess to be awesome. I don't know what the art world is or what it takes to be successful.
but
Certainly talented people, but I want to create anyway.
and I saw you put your hand on your heart a couple times during that what you just said. You have an inner knowing, and that's I know I it's funny being my friend. I notice things like that, but you put your hand on your heart because you have an inner knowing. You are listening, and the whispers have been very consistent since the moment I knew this about you years ago, that you do get to create this art in the world, and all things are lined up for you to do this. So this is my main purpose of, and we're going to close now, of just saying this is my purpose of wanting to support dreamers like you, because it is such a joy for me to see how you are ready to get out of your own way for you to create beauty in the world. And I live in the same world, and I want to see your sculptures. I want to see what your heart wants to make. So you can only see why I'm so passionate about it. I just get really excited. So yeah, Shaun, I want to thank you, and just dedicate this to anyone who's listening, who's ready to take anything about Shaun's experience and our conversation today just to their own world and their own commitments and decisions, and heart knowingness. So that's the purpose of our time together today. Anything you want to say as we close our interview today?
Um,
Specifically for people now listening, they just heard your story. You're talking to
uh,
someone. What would you want to tell them as a closing statement?
um, Life is an amazing experience. My first time last year was good. Uh, I learned uh, different things so that, you know, it's better to travel with more money than less. Like you're so much different. Uh, so it's good to have those experiences. And my next trip, I'll know to like, okay, I like being spontaneous, but it's also good to book ahead and get your places for cheap, you know,
You've
an
done both
Airbnb
now.
reserved.
You've done the poppers trip, and you've done the I can have a
Yeah,
nice shower once in a while. You've done both now.
yeah.
Beautiful.
And it's fun to I don't know, part of me wants to play a game of has wanted to play a game like what's the most miserly way I can do this versus being a little bit like, okay, yeah, I can afford to buy a pizza and buy one every day. Or otherwise, I don't know. It's just there's a different way to view things, and it maybe gets into that law of attraction of just feeling abundant and just enjoying, being grateful, and not constantly look at limitation, but look at, okay, the money's there. The money's there. I've got the money for the trip. It's there in the bank now. Yeah, okay, I'll spend it. Yeah, I'll book this, extend at this Airbnb. good. Oh, I'm enjoying it. I'm not worried about all this other stuff.
Do
It's
you
amazing.
feel like you can now say that you feel more at ease with not regretting that it might have been, that you actually have been living a full life?
Oh, yes, that's so huge.
Yay! Okay,
How,
that's a
how,
go ahead.
how pathetic to think of not having gone on these trips. Oh my gosh, jump out of a boat, docked in a gorgeous harbor into this turquoise water and swim and come back out and oh my gosh, and meeting the people that I met and who just, you know, because you're different, you're from a different culture, you speak a different language, they just think you're awesome. Like, wow, it's that's so awesome about travel. You can meet people that just think you're cool. Like, amazing. I can go abroad and think, you know, have all these people think I'm awesome. But if I stay in Provo, Utah, like, oh, yeah,
Uh,
you're
that's
gone,
only
you
half
know.
the story. Half the story. I think you're pretty awesome. But yes, I know what you're saying. Well, I want to thank you so much for being willing to tell your truth in this beautiful way. And thank you. Have a wonderful evening. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Emily. All your key to it. I thank you for being listening and for using your guide, your intuition, listening to the message, sharing the message, and being the catalyst to get me out and traveling.
Oh, that makes me so happy. You just made my day. Hey, well, I will talk to you. Lots of love to you today.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye.
Wishes to everyone to make your dreams come true. Keep at it. Thanks.
Yay! Perfect.